Wow, on these trips we've done a lot. A lot of things have been blown up. I have used a lot of different tools. This is the best thing I can think of. Parker Schnubel takes on one of the biggest projects he's ever worked on. Buying a Bolivian gold mine that is very old. This huge mine in Bolivia turned out to be the prize. Yes, this mine flooded him and his team with millions. This very old mine is full of history and has a lot of promise, but there are also a lot of risks. Let's start right away and see what this risky move brings. His search took him to a key spot at the border of Bolivia, a place known for its vast material wealth and dangerous terrain. Parker stayed positive, even though there was a lot at stake. His first goal was to get into the mine, but more importantly, he wanted to gain the trust of the people. In the hopes that they would finally let him see the operation for himself and understand what was going on, he was determined to get along with them. But problems came after them. The hired car couldn't make it through the whole trip, so the crew had to leave it in Peru, just before the border with Bolivia. They had no other choice but to continue their journey on foot. For the last part of their trip, they had to cross 160 yards of no man's land, which is an empty area between the two countries that neither country claims. There was a mix of nervousness and excitement in the air as they got closer to the border. This was a very important part of their trip, as they were about to reach gold-rich areas in Bolivia. When they got to Bolivia, a reliable friend there had already set them up with a new car, so they could continue their trip right away. Peru had a lot of problems, but it also taught us a lot about the mining industry in that country. Parker was sure that Bolivia held a lot more promise, with finds that could make or break the whole trip. The team had also already found promising gold deposits in the Peruvian town of Lincolnada. They were looking for rich metal veins that went south through the Andes and into Bolivia. The next place they went was Pupuo, a small frontier town that was rich in gold and built on the same quartz veins that had fed Lincolnada for thousands of years. They would have to drive for 8 hours across the huge empty Altiplano Plateau, which is one of the world's highest and quietest places, to get to Pupuo. They chose this remote area with its wide fields and tall mountain ranges because it was perfect for their gold hunting trip. The Altiplano is full of minerals and has been known for a long time to have secret treasures that have drawn miners and adventurers. The ground is full of good gold. It's clear that that will be very deep, but if the ground is good enough, it's possible. They were determined to go to as many mining areas as possible. Even though they didn't have a clear plan, they thought they would find gold in the strangest places. They felt like they were on the edge of the world because the town was so far away, but it also gave them a hint of the wealth that might be hiding below the surface. No matter what, and it seems like time has forgotten, Pupuo had seen its fair share of gold runs. In the 1800s, Bolivia was one of the biggest gold makers in South America. Miners came to the country in search of wealth, so a lot of the area stayed unused because of bad weather and a lack of infrastructure. Parker knew this direct, risky method could easily go wrong, but he was willing to take the chance to make a lot of money at such an important historical place. Parker and Diego chose to go off on their own to find anyone who could give them information about the mining activity in the area. They talked to a local man in the hopes that he could help them find any hidden gold veins. The local man had some interesting things to say as they talked. He talked about the Spanish conquistadors who had come to these countries many years before, looking for gold, the same thing Parker was looking for. In the 1600s, European explorers and soldiers, called conquistadors, came to the Americas in search of wealth, power, and ways to make the Spanish Empire bigger. They explored a lot of land, often enslaving native peoples because they were hungry for gold, silver, and other valuable materials. Expeditions led by well-known people like Hernando Cortés and Francisco Pizarro brought down strong empires like the Aztec and Inca ones. There were reports that South America was very rich, especially around the legendary city of El Dorado. The Spanish start to believe in the story of El Dorado. One of the brave conquistadors was Gonzalo Pizarro, who returned to Spain with boats full of gold. Brought conquistadors to places like Bolivia, where they thought mountains and rivers held great riches. The Posse silver mines, which were one of the world's largest sources, made the Spanish more interested in Bolivia. People were mostly interested in silver, but gold was also very desirable, and the conquistadors would do anything to get it. Parker looked around at the land around them and noticed the gravel and unique rock shapes that showed the area used to have a lot of gold. It was clear that this area had been visited by many hopeful prospectors over many years. Parker was interested and asked the man if he had ever mined for himself. The man's quiet nod showed that he worked as a gold digger. Parker was interested, so he asked more. He wanted to know if the man had a secret place where he got his gold. The little girl just grinned and didn't say anything. It looked like some things are too valuable to share. His thoughtful answer said a lot. While he was eager to share stories, he wasn't about to give away all of his hard-earned knowledge. Parker said that in places like this, prospectors usually start by looking for float gold in nearby creeks. Small particles move downhill from areas with higher concentration. Finding float gold is often a good sign that there is more substantial gold ahead waiting to be found. But as soon as they started their job, they ran into problems. The wet ground around them wasn't the best sign that their gold hunt would go well. From his own experience, Parker knew that wet conditions usually meant it wasn't a good place to find gold. They didn't find any gold in the dirt, and when they sorted through the sludge, they didn't find much to show for it. Parker lost hope as he dug through the pan and found that it was empty of the expensive metal they were looking for. He said, "Just yellow rock," and his voice was full of sadness. They hoped to find even a small flake, but so far their search has not turned up anything. Lost, because he knew that prospecting usually took patience and persistence. It had been a bad day, but it wasn't completely surprising. Prospecting is often like riding a roller coaster of highs and lows, and today seemed to be harder than usual. Parker, on the other hand, wasn't ready to give up yet. The woman with the wide-brimmed hat across the way caught his attention as he looked at the scene. He told her, "Maybe we can find some leads by asking her," hoping that she or someone close to her could help. Things started to get better for them when they met a local miner who was dealing in gold. The man was kind enough to let Parker and the team see his results, which got them excited again. As everyone crowded around, the miner reached into his pocket and pulled out a small piece of gold. It was the treasure they had been looking for. "No way!" Parker exclaimed, his eyes shining with joy. There was gold in that small nugget, which showed they were in the right place. The local worker then said that he had more things to add to his collection. Parker was very interested as the local miner talked about what he had found across the river in the Golden Eagle area. Parker was eager to make the most of this new information, so he asked the miner to show them exactly where he had been working. Extremely aware of the need for better conditions in order to achieve success. Not only did he have to do the hard, physical work of mining, but he also had to run a mining company, which meant keeping an eye on equipment, working with crew members, and making crucial choices that could mean the difference between success and failure. People were really moved by his amazing story of success, which made him one of the show's biggest stars and made him famous in the competitive field of gold mining. Parker Schnabel became a fan favorite right away on Gold Rush because of how hard he worked, how well he led, and how dedicated he was to the mining industry. Over the years, fans saw him grow as both a small character and a strong leader. His goals grew along with his company. Each season pushed him to set even higher gold production goals. A few hundred ounces would have been enough for most miners, but Parker kept pushing the limits and was always looking for thousands of ounces. Parker quickly found out that digging in this area was a lot harder than he thought it would be. The intense heat, high humidity, and thick vegetation made it almost difficult to work. The crew ran into a number of problems while they were in Guyana. Equipment breakdowns were common. Parker's team worked hard for weeks, but when they finally got back, they had nothing to show for their efforts. No gold. Even though this trip was a huge letdown, it taught them important lessons about how unpredictable mining can be and how important it is to be able to bounce back from bad luck. While Parker's time in Guyana was hard, his work in the Yukon has been much more fulfilling. The Yukon is known as one of the best places in the world for gold, and it's where Parker has found some of the most amazing gold on Gold Rush. During one of his best seasons, Parker found almost 6,000 ounces of gold, which brought in millions of dollars. Parker has an easy-to-understand view on mining. You have to be ready to work hard and take risks to be successful. He thinks that digging is more than just looking for gold. It's also about running the business side of the company well. This means making smart purchases, keeping costs low, and always looking for new chances. On top of his work on the show, Parker is also working on a project called Parker's Trail. In this spin-off show, Parker Schnabel follows in the footsteps of famous Gold Rush explorers. His trip along the Klondike Trail, a historic road where many miners risked their lives in search of gold, was one of the most exciting in the series. Cheers, and see you next time. For being hard to get through because of the cold weather and high elevation. During his trip, Parker faced many of the same problems as the first miners, such as extreme cold, a lack of food, and being physically worn out, which affected both him and his team. Place a dot. Still, Kama Parker's unwavering commitment and great leadership helped them make it through the tough trip. In addition, Parker has spread his mining business to Australia, which is known as one of the world's best places to find gold. With this move, new possibilities were meant to open up for Parker. The past of gold mining in Australia is an important part of the country's growth. The discovery of gold, the growth of the economy, and the changes in society all happen in this chapter. British residents in New South Wales said they found gold in Australia in the 1790s. Gold was talked about in relation to Australia for the first time. But the gold rush didn't start until a big find was made. It was in 1851 that Edward Hargraves found gold in Ba, New South Wales. This was the start of the gold rush. As a direct result of this finding, a huge number of prospectors and settlers came to the area, and rapidly new towns and mining camps were built. There were a great number of gold discoveries made in the open 1850s, the majority of which were in the state of Victoria, with famous goldfields being at Ballarat and Bendigo. As people looked for wealth in the goldfields, these finds led to the growth of prosperous communities and a large rise in the number of people living in the area. During the gold rush, there was also trouble in society. That one that stands out the most was the Eureka Rebellion in Ballarat in 1854. One of the most important moments in Australia's history as a democracy began when miners pushed against high license fees and government rules. Ultimately, changes were made to mining rules and miners' rights were increased. This shows how power was shifting in the colonies. Parker is having to deal with an interesting job while getting used to new environments and rules. The settings here are very different from those in the Yukon. Parker Schnabel is trying to broaden his mining operations and look into new ways to get gold, and this move into Australia is part of that plan. This project shows a great deal of promise for success, even though it is still in its early stages. He might even do better than what he did in the Yukon. Mining for gold is a fast-pacing business that is always changing as new technologies and rules come in and affect how miners do their jobs. Throughout his work, Parker has always been on the cutting edge of these changes by spending a lot of money on cutting-edge equipment and learning about the newest ways to mine. I believe this run was mostly ditches, right? Yes, buddy. There is a chance that gold digging could hurt the environment, which is one of the biggest problems he has to deal with. More and more people are putting pressure on mines to change their ways to be more sustainable and ethical. Parker is aware of these problems and wants his business to have as little of an impact on the world as possible. This is shown by his experiences in Bolivia. Place a dot. Thanks for reading about Parker's trip. If you want to read more about his exciting adventures, please subscribe to get the latest news and updates. Cheers, and see you next time.